Hi, it's Olivia, and it's been a minute, and I guess long story short is that 2022 has just been kind of a trying year, but here I am in a new space for the moment, and I just so badly have wanted to chat about various books and shows and movies that I've been consuming this year. If you're interested in my thoughts on a couple of shows and movies that I've watched this year, I'll shove that at the end. But I'll just start with what I'm currently reading, and I've got two books going. The first is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. This is going since like last year that I have just been playing tag with the library, just getting my hands on it. So I'm glad to finally be getting to it. This is pretty much solely put on my radar by two of my friends who read it, and they seem to really enjoy it. A lot of invisible ink messages in the chat that I really want to go back and dig and find as I go through and read this book. I've just started it, so I'm still at the beginning, but it's following this one African-American family from generations back, like well before the Civil War and slavery, and all the way to present time. So there's that one, and then my bedtime read is The Silmarillion. I honestly didn't think I'd be getting to this at least for a couple more years, but after I posted my Lord of the Rings video, that was actually very highly recommended. I mean, there's definitely people who said they did like it, didn't like it, and I know it's a different beast, if you will. So I've been reading that, and there will be a separate video, hopefully, she said hopefully, a second video for sharing my thoughts on that as I read it. Also, I don't think my Goodreads is totally updated. I mainly use this reading journal. This is the first time I bought a new one in a few years, because I've been using a different one, which is like identical to this one. This one just has a different cover, but the inside is the same. This is the format of this reading journal. I found it on Amazon many years ago, and I really like it, and I've stuck with it, and so that's been kind of where I've been writing reviews. So I read a few memoirs, and one of them being I Am Malala. She is a figure that I had heard about many a times. I knew the like singular event that she's associated with getting shot in the head by the Taliban, but aside from that, I didn't know anything about her, and so I was really happy to finally getting around to her memoir and learning more about her. Another interesting memoir that I got around to this year, I listened to the audiobook. It's called Bird Brother by Rodney Stotts with Kate Pipkin. This was brought to my attention because I'd watched a news segment about this man, Rodney Stotts, who used to be a drug dealer and just, not growing up in the greatest environment, but then he got involved with conservationist work and environmentalism and has become one of the few black falconers in the US. And so he works with, the big birds like the falcons and the eagles. It's really beautiful how nature was a very healing and transformative thing for him. And it's also pretty inspirational because he goes on to sharing his story with other at-risk youth and whatnot in his community. Other memoir that I don't know if you've heard of this one before. It's called I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This one I haven't finished yet. I finally got around to listening to the audiobook, but it was towards the end of the time that I had it, and I got about 85% of the way through before it was the hold ran out. But I think a lot of other people my age really loved iCarly. Really, I am a huge fan of iCarly. Just have watched some of those episodes many times, and she is a very recognizable figure to me. Definitely interesting to see so much of the behind the scenes of her acting career. But it's not just that, it's also, as the title would suggest, about her relationship with her mother. And she is very honest, very transparent, and I look forward to finishing it. Next I have these books, which are books that I read as part of a book club. I'll talk about The City We Became first, and take this opportunity to give some much needed praise and hype for Jananie over at her channel This Story Ain't Over. I adore her channel, and I adore this book club that she started, the Read and Color book club. And like when she announced it, I just, as a viewer of her channel, was thrilled. You can imagine how thrilled I was when she asked me to join on for one of the months and to also be a co-host. And for our month, we read The City We Became. I've only ever read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I haven't continued the series because I know I want to reread book 1 before I do. But this was 2 for 2 for me. Oh, it's only the second book that I read by her, but I was very impressed with this one, and I had a great time reading it for the book club. You know, this story is about if cities were kind of living entities that were kind of, I don't want to say ruled by, but that had like an associated human avatar. And it's just a very unique concept. Not only was it just fun storytelling, but like when she has social commentary, it is just unapologetic, and I love it. So for these books, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, American-Born Chinese, and Echo. I feel like when talking about, if I'm reviewing these books, I feel like I have to mention that I read them as part of a book club, because it genuinely impacted my experience with the book. The book club was through an organization that I'm a part of, and it is like a staff book club, and I'm part of the team that helps run this book club. And so what I'm getting at is that I have talked about these books with, you know, face to face with people, many different people, like in depth, and I've heard so many different perspectives on these books and people's likes and dislikes, and really powerful things that I've heard people say in regards to all 3 of these books, and I feel like that's like a plus to all of them. I think maybe of those 3, I think maybe American-Born Chinese would be my pick as my favorite. It's interesting, there's going to be a Disney Plus TV show for that one. In the world of romance, I think the first book I read this year was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. That book was just, it was everywhere. And guess what? It was some good friends to lovers romance. It really was. I enjoyed that book a lot. And so I was pleasantly surprised. I was worried that it was so hyped up that I was going to be disappointed. I also read Love Notes by Christina C. Jones. I read a couple by her. I don't know where this ranks. I like the community in Love Notes. I really do. And I think there's other books in this community in Mahogany Heights, so I'll have to see about that. Okay, clearly I'm refilming this at a different time, but I was editing this video. I got to the part where I was talking about what I wanted to read by the end of the year, and I just thought I sounded so delusional. There was no way I was going to read everything that I was listing off. So I've changed my mind, and I've narrowed it down to 2 books that I would like to get to, but if I don't, it is what it is. The first one I would love to get to is Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. I love secondhand and used, and so this was from Thrift Books, and I got it for $6 or $7. It was amazing, and I love the cover. I know, I really love this copy. Anyway, I also read 2001: A Space Odyssey by the same author early this year or late last year, and really enjoyed the story and the writing, and I talked about it much more in depth in my video for books I'd recommend if you like the movie Interstellar. I just thought it was really well written, and it didn't read at all like it was published the many decades ago that it was. And so the synopsis for this one is: in the year 2130, a strange object is discovered hurtling through space on what could be a collision course with Earth. What is it? Where did it come from? And most important, what does it want? See, that just sounds like something right up my alley in terms of space, alien, first contact, and it's from a writer who I now know I enjoy, so I look forward to it. And the other book I'd love to get to, I believe it's a translated work called The Wizard of the Crow, and the author is an acclaimed Kenyan novelist and poet, and this was put on my radar by Books by Leynes, and I just recall this being a particular favorite book of hers, and I always like hearing her recommendations and favorites. So I think that wraps up the book portion of this video, and so if you're interested in my thoughts on a couple of TV shows and movies, I'll start that now. When I think of movies of 2022 so far, I feel like there's been a lot of original stuff coming from the horror thriller genre, and I've just had a really good time going to the theater this year to see those kinds of movies. So I'm talking about Nope, Men, The Black Phone, Barbarian, Smile, even Don't Worry Darling. There's just a bunch of original works, and I haven't gotten around to seeing X or Pearl and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. So I just felt like there's a lot of fun stuff. The biggest surprise, far and wide, was Barbarian. I hadn't even heard of this until it got close to when it came out. And unfortunately, it's not in theaters anymore. I recommend that you see it with somebody, because that movie just completely goes in unexpected directions, and it's one of those that draws all of these different reactions. Like there's people laughing and people covering their eyes with dread, and then also just yelling in frustration at the characters. It was simply an entertaining movie. It was an entertaining movie. Nope was a big one I was anticipating, and I enjoyed that one. I did enjoy Nope, though I will say when I first left the theater, I felt like there is a piece missing. Like there is a piece missing that would have connected the story together more. The imagery and the cinematography was just out of this world. It really was like a very visually amazing movie, but plot-wise, I had some things that I was pondering afterwards. I also wanted to mention Men only because I don't think this movie was on many people's radar, and I don't think this movie is gonna be for many people, because the final act is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. Just straight up bizarre. Definitely rated R, kind of bizarre if you catch my drift. And this movie just had an eerie vibe, because this girl goes to, you know, as they all do in the scary movies, she goes into an isolated area all alone, and she keeps coming across various men in her town, and that's really all there is to say. And then as far as TV, today is a Wednesday, and so I'm gonna start off by just mentioning that Abbott Elementary is one of the biggest highlights of this year for me, truly. I adore this show. Any kind of praise it gets, I think it deserves. It's just very wholesome. And while at the same time being wholesome, it also is spotlighting some issues in the educational system, and it's in a style that I like. The last episode that premiered was the Halloween episode, and it was perhaps one of my favorite of all of them. And then House of the Dragon just wrapped up, and I didn't think I was going to. I watched all of Game of Thrones, haven't read the book, I just watched the show. And I didn't think I was gonna watch the prequel series. I didn't know if I had enough interest. And then I watched the first episode, and you know what? It got my interest, and it kept it. And I thought it was a really strong first season. The first season of shows can be a hit or miss, and I just felt like there was a number of very, very good moments from season 1. Then we also had Euphoria earlier this year, season 2, which was so messy. One episode in particular just like completely took a right turn into just straight chaos, just absolute chaos. So while I enjoyed watching the mess play out, I was also getting kind of annoyed at certain plot points, some things that I felt were just disregarded from the first season. So I felt kind of mixed, but I was still entertained, that's for sure. You know, I always want to look at some juicy drama. But lastly, Stranger Things. Stranger Things returned with season 4. And yet again, I was entertained. I thought it was good, and I really look forward to seeing how everything's gonna end in what I hope is the final season, season 5. I do not want them to drag it on. Like, I really hope they stick to saying that it's gonna be the last season, because when things get dragged out, it ruins the show. And what's the quote? You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I feel like that applies to TV shows that run on for way too long. They ruin themselves. So I'd love to know your thoughts on absolutely anything. What have you been up to this year? I'm just so happy to be getting another video out, and I will see you in another video. Bye.